What if I told you that Qatar owns more of London than the Queen did?
Wow.
There's a lot of controversy going on right now because the World Cup is in Qatar. Qatar have a lot of civil rights and human rights violations. Okay. So there's a lot of issues and controversy about the fact that Qatar won the World Cup hosting duties because they're anti-LGBTQ because it's an Islamic nation. There's women's rights issues as well. There's migrants issues with the immigrants being paid very, very low wages. So it's essentially slave labor, passports being withheld, people being trapped and imprisoned, blah, 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 blah. A lot of things, okay? A lot of countries like the UK, Germany, and so on and so forth have been protesting the involvement of their countries in the World Cup and coverage of the World Cup and everything. So, for example, in the UK, they didn't even show the opening ceremony, and they showed something else, which I was like, this is my thing. Why are you there? Why would you travel all the way to Qatar to broadcast this thing and then protest it from Qatar, collecting your wages? That's the first thing I would ask you. It's like, that's the first thing. But anyway, regardless, Infantino, which is an amazing name, the president of FIFA, I was like, this guy's name is Infantino. Sounds like a damn superhero. It's like the guy's name is Infantino. So it's like, anyway, Infantino, this guy who has a bald head, so he looks like a supervillain as well. He talked about how the West are hypocrites. Okay? Because of them criticizing Qatar when the West have been screwing people over for centuries. I know, and everybody knows, how corrupt FIFA is. FIFA is extremely corrupt. These guys take bribes for fun. Everybody is on the take. The stuff I'm going to say here is going to blow you away.
Okay.
It's going to blow you away. What if I told you that Qatar owns more of London than the Queen did?
Wow.
Qatar has a prime minister, okay? A former prime minister. And the guy's name is like HBJ or something. He has a nickname or something like that, right? And he leads like a consortium of investments from Qatar and the royal family, his family, Al Thani family, and all this sort of stuff. And for the last 10 years or so or whatever, they've been buying up parts of Britain, properties.
Okay.
To date, they have over 4,000 land titles, like in the UK. 4,000. There's a place called the Shard. The Shard is one of the most iconic. It's the tallest building in London. It's one of the most iconic things on the skyline. That was opened in 2012 with £2 billion of Qatari money. Qatar have a major stake in Barclays Bank because they gave Barclays something like £4 billion in exchange for a 322 million cash payment, so that Barclays wouldn't have to go to the UK government for a bailout after the 2008 collapse. So they now own a major stake in one of the main banks in England. Qatar owns 22% of Sainsbury's, which is one of the main grocery stores in the UK. Qatar owns 20% of British Airways, the national airline of the UK. Qatar owns 20% of Heathrow Airport, one of the two major international airports in the UK. They also own the HSBC Bank headquarters in the UK, in Canary Wharf, which they bought for £1 billion. They own the Ritz, Claridge's, the Savoy, the Connaught, the Berkeley, the Churchill, the Grosvenor House Suites, and the Intercontinental Hotel Park Lane. They also own Harrods, which they bought from Mohammed Al Fayed, one of the most iconic department stores on earth. They own Forbes House, which the Altani guy now says he wants to turn into the most expensive house in Britain for 300 million. In total, this country owns 2.1 million square meters of property in the UK. That is about 1.5 times the size of Hyde Park, which is one of the biggest. It's like the biggest park in London. That same country that you've sold so much of your place to, because they have 35 billion pounds worth of investment in Britain, 10 billion of which is in property. Okay? Second of all, this is the country that you're now insulting and attacking because of a football tournament. So they're not good enough to stage a football tournament or you show the opening ceremony, but they're good enough to sell your land to sell parts of your capital to take bailout money from. No, please explain this to me. Because you see, people like to bamboozle the public. The British public do not know this. Because if they knew this, everything starts looking very different. Because when you're out there protesting at the behest of the mainstream media telling you to go, oh yeah, this is also wrong, LGBTQIA+. I was going to say something else there, but I won't. %29 of the UK's fuel comes from natural gas. And almost all of UK's liquefied natural gas comes from Qatar via a place called the South Hook Terminal, which is 67.9% owned by Qatar. These guys could literally turn the lights off in England if they feel like it. They could turn your lights off. So all those Xbox that you're playing, those PlayStation you're playing, that Netflix you're watching, that World Cup that you're watching on a television being powered by electricity, those same guys, if your lips flap a little bit too much, could turn off your lights. Talking, corruption, okay, it's corrupt, then stop taking them their electricity. Stop taking it. Corruption, right? Stop taking their electricity and stop taking their money. People know how to talk. You see, I'm looking at it. Your electricity and power is coming from this country. You've sold major pieces of your capital to them. You're still taking money from them. The same corporations who run these media companies are taking power and taking things from these guys, and you open your mouth to insult them? Now, this is not to say that what they're doing is good in Qatar. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that this is what is known as virtue signaling. Virtue signaling is when on the surface you want to appear virtuous and have the moral high ground while at the same time benefiting from the crimes. That is the skill of the West. That is what they do brilliantly. Because the same people that are insulting Putin for invading Ukraine are the same people who went and invaded Iraq and Afghanistan. Specifically Iraq, who had nothing to do with 9/11. You're the same people who went into a war in Vietnam that had nothing to do with you. The same people who went to the Falklands. The same people. Now you're not talking about people invading places that they shouldn't have gone. What about you? So from my point of view, when you're talking about the World Cup, I'm like, listen, forget this. It's just football. Let's think about your country. So you better watch your mouth. And I'm telling you here, you're watching this. I'm telling you to watch your lips. On behalf of Qatar, watch your lips or I turn your lights off. Send you to bed. And if you're listening to this in America, and you think that you're getting away scot-free, those guys have a little present for you coming to the tune of billions. They're coming to buy you too. Because you're in a recession now, so you need the money and you need the electricity. The general public are being played for fools. Because all this outrage about Qatar is fake. Because they're all in it together.
It worries me, personally, that we owe so much money to China. It worries me that, as you say, they own pretty much 20% of England. And I've always, Kyrie Irving talks about the Illuminati and hidden forces and invisible, people who are very quiet yet have a lot of and it's one of those things where now, I have a feeling that when people wake up and they realize that this is not crazy talk, it's going to be too late.